Today's episode, we're just gonna fly by the seat of our pants. So growth has been on my mind lately, and honestly, my most listened to episodes are about growth. I think last year it was if you're not growing, you're dying. That is still top of the charts, number one most listened to episode that I've ever done on this podcast. And then I did a 2.0 version of that with my guest co-host, Tommy McAllister. And if you're not familiar, he is the marriage coach that we hired a couple of years ago and have since worked with and just grown that relationship and just really cool ways. And anyway, so growth is one of those things. And I was just talking about growth to Alyssa, who has longtime friend, mentor in the business, all the things. She and I have grown together through a lot of stages of life. And we were talking about growth in the fact of you do all the work, right? You get the ground ready, say if you're planting a garden or planting flowers, you cultivate the land, you till it up, you do that hard work. You make sure that it has the right nutrients in it, you plant the actual seeds, you water them, but you can't make it grow. You can't force something to grow. It either grows or it doesn't grow. You can't force something to grow, no matter how much you want it to. You can't. And so then it's the question of, okay, so how do you grow, right? And I shared a post today on Facebook, and honestly, as I typed it up and then reread it, I was like, yeah, I might have come across a little aggressive. And that wasn't the intent, but it's to bring this awareness to the fact that growth does not happen by default. Growth is not unintentional, and growth is not natural. It's not. It has to be intentional. It has to be something that you set your mind to do, right? In the actions of positioning yourself, of prepping yourself, of cultivating the environment for growth. But you can't force the growth. You can facilitate it, but you can't force it, right? And you can't force someone else to grow. The only one, that can create the environment is you for growth in yourself. You can help foster and facilitate and create that environment for others to grow as well. Obviously, I'm a mindset coach. Obviously, I'm someone who helps people in their wellness, where we are bringing the solutions and helping people to grow in certain areas in wellness. But you can't force anyone to, you can't force the actual growth. You can't create the actual growth in and of itself, but you can set the stage for that growth. And that is through being intentional. So deciding, being intentional about it, and then taking action. And so I know it's kind of a catchy title. When we think about this facilitating and positioning ourselves and, doing the work, showing up, putting legs in our prayer to grow, those are all the things that we can control, right? But we can't actually control the fruit that's produced. We can control how we respond to the pruning and the refining processes, and embracing them and leaning into them, but we can't actually produce the fruit ourselves. And when we try to, that's what leads to burnout, overwhelm, frustration, and if you're thinking about this think about this in fitness. You can do the work to grow your muscles, to burn your fat. You can make sure you're getting enough protein. You can make sure you're getting enough rest, but you can't actually be muscle grow, right? It has to go through that process. And so I think when we think about growth, that's really what it is. It's that intentional positioning of yourself, doing the work, taking the actions, but also holding the results and the outcome very loosely, in the sense of, we need a goal and we need direction, right? Or else why would we be doing the things we're doing, right? If it's so vague. But it's more of an identity of who we are rather than just what we do. And that's exactly what growth is that it's intentionally taking that action because of who we are. It's not just checking some boxes and doing the things, but it's falling in love with that process, marrying ourselves to the process and divorcing from the results. And so, the post that I had done on Facebook earlier today was, just, it came from, I've been listening to the replays of the Kristen Boss Rise Up Summit, and she was talking about going back to her hometown and how people were like, wow, like, we don't even recognize you. You've changed so much. And she's like, wow, you haven't changed at all. And so, and that's in physical appearance, yes, but mostly in like how you carry yourself and what you're doing and who you are, your identity, right? It's a good thing that we don't stay the same, right? Because if you're not growing, you're dying. And I love that. I love that phrase because, I always joke that as soon as you're born, you start to die, right? Which is true because every day that you're alive, you get closer to your death in a physical sense. But when we don't challenge ourselves, whether you're challenging your muscles or you're challenging your brain or you're challenging your comfort zone to get uncomfortable, we can't grow. And when we're not growing, we are dying on the inside. We're dying to the opportunities that God has laid out there for us because we're not intentionally growing, so we're not going to intentionally be aware of those situations and those doors that he opens and those Holy Spirit moments where he's, starting, like having us start a conversation. Like we still have to start the conversation. He can put someone right next to us that he wants us to talk to, but if we're not aware of how he's moving and his presence in those moments, we can blaze right on by. And this comes from intentionality of creating margin so that in those moments, we're not so frazzled and frustrated and in a hurry that we can't slow down and embrace those things and lean into them, right? Because we can go out and so if you have a business like I do, you could go out and you could sponsor 30 people, right? Like I bet you could find 30 people that would be willing to, do some either buy some wellness products or, share some, you could probably find 30 people, right? But like that takes a lot of work. And are those people actually people you want to work with? And what's going to be the long-term growth and results of doing something like that versus working with people who want what you have versus working, helping people build their businesses who are part of a bigger mission and not just to check the boxes, get the paycheck kind of people, right? And so when we think about our growth from that perspective, that stepping back, looking at the big picture of like, it's not just about the carrot hanging in front of us. It's not just about, our success, like it's about something much bigger than that. Like, are you working out just to look good? Well, that's only going to get you so far, right? What happens when you face struggles where, you're not getting the results that you want, even though you're doing the same thing, right? Because muscles, eventually you have to challenge yourself more than you once did, or else the things that you are doing will no longer work to grow and build your muscles, right? It has to be even more of a challenge. My highlights in my Facebook this week reminded me that this time last year, I had just run my first ever marathon. And I was remembering the lessons that I learned from that I will take with me for the rest of my life. And they were the fact that, yes, running the marathon was physical, but the challenge to my mindset was the biggest part of that. And what I learned was your body always has more to give. It's your mind that has to be convinced. And the other thing is community is so important. The people that you choose to surround yourself with, especially if you're working closely with them, that environment, because there are going to be times when you need to carry them and other times when they need to carry you. And, like I wouldn't have been able to finish that marathon without Zach by my side because, there was one point where we're running sort of down this hill, right? My right calf seized up. I felt like there was a softball where my calf should have been, and it hurt so bad. And, he was like, just so you know, the cutoff is coming up here. Like, if you don't pass this by this time, like, we're not going to finish this race within the time frame. And I was like, well, gosh darn it, I have not done all this training and run 20 miles or 22 miles at the time just to miss the cutoff in the last, little leg of this because of my stupid calf muscle, right? And so I dug deep. And even though my running form, and I'm probably like dragging that leg at the time, like I pushed myself to get past that checkpoint. And the crazy thing is, for probably another quarter to a half mile, the van was right behind us that was picking up people who had dropped off and who were ready to quit. Now, let me tell you, when you are physically in pain and then your brain is like, we could literally be like, I'm done at any second and we don't have to run another step because we can just get on that van and it'll take us back to the finish line. When that is right behind you over your shoulder, that is a challenge, let me tell you. But in that moment, I just kept thinking of like how much progress I had made through the challenging of my body and the training process. And then the fact that I did something that I've never done before, and I was so uncomfortable in mind and body. And, Zach helped me get through that. He helped keep me on track for where I needed to be at certain times. And then when I thought I had nothing left, he helped me go from light post to light post and just keep setting those small goals within the bigger goal. And eventually we chipped away at it and we finished that dang race and we both cried and it was overwhelming and then we both couldn't walk. So super fun. But then like the last thing that I learned from that is just that we can do hard things, and it's really good to challenge ourselves, because when we challenge ourselves in especially things like that, physical things that require mindset even more than the physical aspect, it impacts everything else. And it gives our brains that evidence of, I can get uncomfortable, I can do hard things, I can push myself, and I can keep on going. And if I can do this, what else am I capable of doing, right? And so, I'm not telling you to go out there and sign up for a marathon. I will tell you that's probably the scariest part of signing up for a marathon, is actually just signing up for the marathon and paying the money and then being like, okay, now I got to train, right? But like, what is something that you've always looked at and you're like, oh, I can never do that, but I kind of want to do that, like, go do it. Like, go do it. Go challenge yourself, because if you continue to stay comfortable, even though you're uncomfortable, like so say, you have habits and you are, overweight right now and you just don't feel confident or comfortable in your own skin, but you continue to do the same actions that are keeping you where you are, even though that's uncomfortable in the sense of like, I'm not comfortable in my own skin, it is comfortable in the sense that this is what is known to me. And therefore, this is my comfort zone, and I would rather have this discomfort of being uncomfortable in my own skin than challenging myself to get into an area where it's not my go-to, it's not normal for me, and I'm creating a new identity in that, right? And so the thing is, like, we're always going to pay a price, but we need to understand how the brain works, and the brain wants to stay comfortable, even if it's uncomfortable, right? What is known is what is safe, even if we don't like it. And the only way to continue growing is because that growth zone is ever changing, because now I've ran a marathon. So like the idea of running one, now I'm like, I got the evidence. That's really hard, right? So maybe that changes my perspective on if I want to do that again, because I have a realistic understanding of everything that goes into that. But it's different. So now it's like, okay, well, how do I challenge myself from here? Like, do I need to challenge myself more physically, or, is this a mindset thing? And that's the thing. Like, if you're still doing the same things that you've done that got you to where you are now, you need to understand that those same things are not going to get you to the next place where you want to go, because we grow through the discomfort, we grow through the unknown, we grow through the challenge, and then coming out on the other side and be able to look back and remember these lessons. And the cool thing about this is, it's not Like, don't get this confused with like being a selfish thing of like, I just always have to be challenging myself so that I can be the best. It's not that, because actually what we can do is in these things where we do challenge ourselves and we grow, what we can then do is we can turn around and we can create and hold this space for other people to do the same thing. And to facilitate growth in others, to create that space and that environment, that community for them to do the same, right? But in their own way, where they are and where they want to be. And so, yeah, I guess this is like the if you're not growing, you're dying 3.0, because growth is such a cool thing. And aside from looks, like, I hope people would be able to recognize me in the sense of like my face is still the same, hopefully, and I'm aging gracefully and those kinds of things. But when I think back to like the comfort zone of our old stomping grounds, right? Like, I want people to be like, wow, you've changed so much. Like, mentally, the things that you're doing, the ways you're challenging yourself, the way you're putting yourself out there, willing to be used by God, no matter how crazy that looks like. I want that to blow people's minds, not for my own glory or success, but because I want that to be a catalyst that's going to challenge somebody else to question their normal and their status quo and to grow, right? Like, I never want to be like, people be like, oh yeah, you're still the same as high school. Like, you're still stuck in those glory days. Like, not at all. Like, that is not me. Like, and if you have done any kind of growth or challenging yourself over the years, you might find that you go back to those environments and situations and with certain people and circles and find that it's actually more uncomfortable to be there now, because the things that they're doing are things that you no longer do. And you don't even think about the fact that you no longer do those, because you've grown through the challenges and you've grown through the lessons that you've learned through doing the hard things and doing the things that are uncomfortable for you, that will produce growth on the other side. Not that you are forcing or producing that growth, but you're facilitating and setting the stage so that growth is possible, right? So I hope you enjoyed this today, and more than enjoying it, I hope that this challenges you to take a look at your life and see like, okay, where have I grown the most? And are there other areas where I need to challenge myself right now? Like, are there areas that I've been neglecting? Are there areas where I haven't challenged myself in a while and I've been kind of coasting along, where I've been very unintentional and I need to be more intentional right now? And if you have a community of people, or you have someone that you typically grow together and challenge each other, share this episode with them and then leave me a review on what it is that you are doing outside of your comfort zone, in that growth zone, so that you can challenge and grow yourself. I can't wait to hear what that's going to look like for you, and to see you on the other side of that, and to be able to celebrate how far you've come, doing things that you thought you would never do, that you thought would be never possible for you, and what's come from that on the other side. Take care, my friends.